email and now SMS marketing. I mean, just a way that you can own your fans' information, and like things shift and evolve. And like, yeah, it's great to like, sure, currently Instagram is like the official artist's homepage at this point, is their profile, is like how you interact and how you get information out. But 4 years ago it was Facebook, and maybe it'll shift and evolve into TikTok. Who knows? What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, the book. I don't know if you can tell, I'm a little stuffed up right now. I'm just getting over a cold. Yes, it is a cold. It's not COVID. I got tested. It's negative. I'm also completely vaccinated, which if you haven't been vaccinated, I highly encourage it. It is a marvelous thing. Part of the reason I have a cold now is because I'm going out living my life again. And naturally living life with other humans around, and you pick up these common colds and the random stuff that was a part of life in the before times, but now we're getting close to the after times, which is very exciting because that means live music is coming back very, very, very soon. I was able to perform a show for my release just a few weeks back. It was a live streamed concert because we're not quite there in California to open up the venues to attendees, but we're getting there. But I did get to perform inside of the venue with a full band, and I was levitating the entire time. It was quite a magical experience. Honestly, one of the highlights of my year. Even performing in an empty club with the band, though, it was quite magical. So get vaccinated. Come on, you can do it. Anyway, today my guest is Michael Walker. He is in the band Paradise Fears. Now, just about a decade ago, they made headlines. Well, they did something that they call tour hacking. This is the DIY method of DIYers. And what they did was basically they sold 24,000 CDs in just a few months to, get this, fans standing in line for concerts. Not their concert, mind you. Other people's concerts. I'll let him tell the full story of how this happened, but they sold the 24,000 CDs at around $10. You do the math. Not bad for hustling your CDs on the street. Now, obviously, this tactic doesn't really work anymore. So we talk about the evolution and what that turned into and what his ideas are now in how you can take the same methods of tour hacking and how that worked a decade ago and what he's seen work today. And this was a much more of a conversation, and we pontificate quite a bit back and forth on all different promotional methods. And this was one where we kind of went deep into marketing concepts and tactics and human psychology and sociology and all of that stuff. And I think you're going to dig it if you're looking for more kind of creative marketing techniques and tactics and figuring out what should be working these days and isn't, and why it's not, and how people are responding to your music and incentives and blah, 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 all that stuff. Anyway, I think you're going to dig the episode. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Ari Herstand. You can find all of us at Ari's Take on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Of course, visit aristake.com to get on that email list. That's where you're going to get all the most current, relevant information. And of course, subscribe to this show, follow it, like it, however you're listening to it right now. Just hit that like button, hit that subscribe, follow button. And if you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment. I want to hear what you think. I read all those comments. And if you could leave a review, preferably 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, that would be wonderful. Those really help. All right, let's kick into the show. All right, Michael Walker, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Totally. So you have a really interesting story. Now, the headline, which got my attention, and I feel like I heard about this back in the day when you're actually doing it, is that your band Paradise Fears sold like 24,000 CDs to people waiting in line for other shows, and then you charted on Billboard. Because can you explain this from the get-go? Because this is something that I want to hear more about.
Absolutely, yeah. So we Had this idea based off of we grew up in this pop rock, pop punk scene with like Mayday Parade and All Time Low and Blink-182, and we heard about them doing this, and I think this was pretty common at festivals like Warped Tour, where they were just walking around with headsets and they're meeting people and selling CDs and just hustling CDs, and apparently it worked really well for them. And my band grew up in a really small town in Vermillion, South Dakota, and there's a few thousand people that live there year round. And when we first decided we wanted to pursue our music full time out of high school, I remember working really hard to book our first tour. Like we were just reaching out to everyone on MySpace and trying to like set up these shows. And we're
What
really
year are we
excited.
talking? This is like 2009, 8?
2010.
10? Okay.
2010, yeah. And and back then we were so excited. We finally like booked a full like regional tour, and we were about to go out, and we were telling our friends, yeah, we're going out on tour, and it's gonna be cool. And, really quickly we learned that it's not enough to just be able to book the shows, but you actually have to know how to get people to come out to the shows.
Yeah. So you played to a lot of empty rooms, I'm assuming?
Yeah, empty rooms, or like just the bartender in the back of the room, and we're like lugging our gear up 3 flights of stairs, and it's like no one came. And my parents are like, how is it going? It's awesome, it's great.
Oh God. Oh.
And at the time we were living in our van, sleeping in Walmart parking lots, and I remember like going into Walmart and getting a big stack of flour tortillas and a big jar of peanut butter, and that was like breakfast, lunch, and dinner for us every day. It was peanut butter tortillas.
You think that the musician's life is glamorous.
Yeah, right.
You hear these stories.
Sharp
Yeah,
contrast.
been there.
Right. Sometimes though, like where the glamour came in was when you throw a banana in the peanut butter tortilla, and then it's like a peanut butter banana tortilla, and that's now we're talking. So I mean, this idea that now we call it tour hacking. I think back in the day we referred to it as tour hustling, and then it evolved over time, and now it's tour hacking. And basically the idea was an idea our lead singer had, which he in turn heard of from Mayday Parade, doing it at Warped Tour. And the idea was, we were huge fans of bands like All Time Low, Mayday Parade, and they had like millions of fans, and before their shows they would have thousands of people waiting in line to go into the show.
Right.
And sometimes for since the morning or even like days in advance, people would just be waiting, not really doing anything better than just waiting for the show. And so we thought, what if we introduce ourselves to these people and share some of our music? And so there were 6 of us in the band, and we split up into groups of 2, and we followed 3 different tours around the country. And I was like a super shy, awkward kid, so like walking up to strangers in line and introducing us did not come naturally at all. I was like shaking and stuttering when I walked up to people. But what we found was just that it worked really, really well. And in about 4.5 months, we sold 24,000 CDs doing that with 6 of us in the band.
Wait, so break this down a little bit more. I need to know how this went. So you would walk up to somebody in line holding, a Discman and headphones? How did this work?
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is it's been a while now. It's been like a hot minute, but I could probably still, just from like, it's been so hard burned into my DNA from doing it so many times, that I could probably like give you.
I'm an all-time Low fan standing in line with great anticipation. The doors are opening in 2 hours.
You're wearing
young,
like an all-time Low shirt. You're sitting down on a blanket at the front of the line.
Yep.
So I'd walk up like, hey, are you guys waiting in line for the All-Time Low show?
Yeah,
like
I totally am.
I'm like, we're an All-Time Low show.
Duh.
Awesome.
Right.
Right. Do you mind if I talk to you for a few minutes while you're waiting in line?
Yeah.
And that was
you're cute, sure. Right.
Yeah, because you don't want to just like butt into conversation. You want to kind of have like permission before you start talking to people. That's really awesome. So my name's Michael. I play keyboard in a band called Paradise Fears, and basically we're huge fans of All Time Low, and someday we'd really love to go on tour with them. And we noticed that before their shows, they always have thousands of people waiting in line. So we thought that a smart thing to do would just be to introduce ourselves and share some of our music. So if you're interested, I've got a pair of headphones here that have some 30-second clips of our songs. But I should probably warn you that most people who listen to the songs enjoy them so much that they start to like cry and faint. And so if you need any tissues, I brought a backpack full of tissues. I have really fast reflexes, so I'll make sure you like fall faint, you don't hit your head on the ground. Yeah, that was like my go-to icebreaker.
That's funny. That's a good one. That's good. That's really good. I like that. So I'm like,
And
yeah, sure, okay, I guess. So then they listen. I listen.
yep. And the secret was back in the day, we experimented with different things. We played it with like a speaker. We did like different like mediums, and what worked best for us was actually these like cheap pair of $10 Sony headphones that you could break apart. So the two different earphones like were kind of separated, and two people could listen at once. So then it kind of became like a shared experience between two people that was still kind of private, where they were kind of listening together. And so usually we'd walk up and there's a group of like 5 or 6, people waiting in line together. And so two of them would be listening at a time. And as they're listening to it, I would have to start a conversation with the other people on the line and just ask, so like, is this your first all-time low show, or have you like come out to a show before? What's your favorite all-time low song? And just building, like having a conversation, just being human and building a relationship, and trying to come up with as many inside jokes as I possibly can in the course of a short conversation, so that I could like personalize the conversation. It wasn't just like a cookie cutter like same conversation with everyone.
Sure.
So if they were wearing something funny, like you might like try to work it into it somehow. But basically worked the way around the group, so everyone had a chance to listen to the songs. A lot of times, if people are listening to it, sometimes I would make a joke about like, oh man, like you have like a really intense listening face, because they'd be like, sitting there like listening. After everyone had a chance to listen, I would say, awesome. So, what did you guys think? Did you like it? Did you hate it? And 9 times out of 10, they'd be like, yeah, this was awesome. Where can we listen to more? Like, well, if you liked it, if you're interested, I have a backpack full of CDs here. And this is it's called Yours Truly, and it was produced by the same guys that produced All Time Low and Mayday Parade. And I think if you like the music you just listened to, you'd really like the CD. Normally, there's 11 songs on it, so normally I charge $10 for it. But to be honest, the reason that I became a musician, the reason I'm out here right now, isn't because we're trying to make as much money as possible, but really it's just because, like I said, we want to go on tour with All Time Low, and we want to be able to reach as many people with our music. So, if you have $10 on you, we really appreciate it. It goes towards touring and recording new music. But also, if you don't have $10 on you, I'm happy to give you a CD for free.
And how many people took you up on the $10 versus the free?
I would say probably 4 out of 5 groups. There's multiple people who bought the CD at full price, and a lot of times people, like I remember getting a $100 bill once for for someone who was going above and beyond. And so we definitely sometimes we did little things where it's like, if I really liked a group, I might give them like 2 for the price of 1 or stuff like that. But I would say probably over 90 to 95% of people actually got the CD at full price.
Okay, my math isn't great, but 24,000 CDs over 4 months, where 90 to 95% bought it at $10. That is around $200,000. Are you here telling me that you made $200,000 by hawking your CDs to fans in line at All Time Low shows? Because is that serious?
I think it was somewhere between 1 to 200K. So it might have been, we might have given out more 2-for-1s than I really recall. But it was somewhere in that ballpark.
Wow. So I mean, artists are listening to this right now. They're like, they're looking at their favorite bands right now, their tour schedules that are now being announced post-COVID, and they're like, oh, we're gonna go do this. But I, let's remind everyone listening, before you start jumping in the lines of fans sitting outside the venue. This is 2010. This is pre-Spotify. This is when people still bought CDs. Obviously, these kids who are waiting in line for their latest, hottest band right now, they don't even have CD players. They might not even, they probably never bought a CD in their life. So this is actually a really interesting time. But I mean, to continue that story, not only is that amazing that you made all this money from just showing up there. I mean, the cats on Venice Beach right now, who are still doing it to this day with the Discmans and hawking their CDs. I mean, I would marvel at your numbers and your success rate. But All Time Low, actually, it worked. They brought you on tour, right?
Yeah, that was like a dream come true when that happened. I remember the moment that we learned that, like, because we were out, I think probably tour hacking, but I remember we were staying at, like, a couple of people, we were staying at their house. I remember getting the news from their manager over an email, and I remember literally just jumping up and down around the house, being like, "This is crazy!"
How did they come in? What happened? How did that happen?
Yeah, yeah. So our lead singer had been in conversation with them through email. I think he had reached out. Also, I mean, so they heard about what we were doing, and I remember when we were following them on tour, it was. I mean, not necessarily an ideal situation because they had a tour bus and they had a driver, and like the dates that they were driving to, sometimes they would be driving overnight. And so
Hmm.
for us, as much as we wanted to like stay for every show, most of the time, like as soon as the show started, like, all right, in the car, driving to a
Right.
nice place,
Wow.
drive to a McDonald's and pull out our laptops, and we also had like a notebook where we were like taking emails, just like add everyone's email on
Smart.
Facebook.
Smart.
And so like we were pretty go go go, and a lot of times we had to drive like long drives, and but I remember in Nashville, they had a sold out show, so they had like two back to back dates, and so we got to stay after one of their shows. And we had this idea before this, which was basically like in line. We always would give someone every night. We would give them a CD and we say, "Hey, the guys usually come out after the shows and take pictures, sign autographs. Would you mind giving them the CD and letting them know that we're doing this thing?" And so we did that for probably like 20 dates.
Wow.
And then finally we had this opportunity to stay after the show, and Alex Gaskarth like comes out and he's like taking pictures behind the fence and whatnot. And I remember like walking up like, "Hey, like, so here's our CD, like we're doing this thing." And I remember he looked at it and he smiled at me. He's like, "You know what? We actually have like 12 of these CDs in our van right now. We've listened to it or in our bus. Like we like
Yeah.
it, but we don't need another one of these. Like,
Right.
hold on to it. You can sell it." Um, like, yeah, like that totally makes sense. I don't know why I just thought that he was like untouchable, or it's like somehow these like would never magically not get these. But
Mhm.
so that's kind of how we established contact originally, and then we reached out via email, and we were talking with their management, and they were doing this upcoming tour, and they gave us the opportunity to open for them on their next tour. And you bet when we were opening for them, we were still doing the same thing. But
Are you serious?
but
And saying we're the
oh,
openers right now? Yeah.
yeah, it was so much better too when we were actually opening for it too, because then
Oh,
it was just way more credibility. But gosh, dude, I remember one time. We were such amateurs, but we were out like literally doing this before the show, and I think we had like the yesterday's day sheet for some reason, and we had the wrong times on like when we were gonna be going on
Oh
stage.
no.
And I remember being out like meeting people online for the show, and someone either on our crew and our band came up like, "Dude, like we're about to go on stage, like come back."
Oh my
And I remember
gosh.
like, "I gotta go," I like ran and jumped on the stage. The players over thousands of people, and
Wow. That's hilarious. That's
it
amazing.
was, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think that there's something so important and so powerful about just like having conversations, like real conversations with your people and building a community with them. And I think that having those conversations is really the thing that separated, and it was really like the core behind what we were able to do independently, was that direct relationships that we had built.
So now I want to know, did you sell more to people in line before your shows, or did you sell more at the merch table after the shows?
That's a good question. Gosh, I think that we sold a little bit more before the shows than
so
after. But the
crazy.
merch tables were great. The merch table, and I think that they probably kind of tied into each other too, because it's like, there's something like if you meet someone face to face in the line first, and then they, especially for the opener, and like they don't really know who you are, they don't really care that much,
Right.
and then it's like they meet you personally, then you can bet that their attention is going to be like 100 times more focused.
Totally.
Like, wow, I know that person. Like I met
Yep.
them, and they're going to be more likely to come to the merch table afterwards.
I mean, that's great. It's honestly, it's a testament. Well, you put yourself out there. It is very, because I think there's a lot of musicians have this, that musician's mystique, and that it's more important to be mysterious and to be elusive. And it's like that rock star mentality. I mean, granted, this is broken down over the last 10 years quite a bit because of social media, and everyone is DMing everyone, and you can see, people's stories and reels and all of that. They're the inner bit of their lives. And you can literally send a message to your favorite musician's pocket these days, and their leg will buzz. So like, if you want to make your favorite musician's leg buzz, you just shoot him a DM, but and that hasn't been that way before. But I do remember, during the MySpace era back then, like um I became friends with Ron Pope, and we went on tour together. And he was a MySpace star. He was one of the guys. He was always on the top 3 charts of the unsigned charts for MySpace. He had like 70 million plays on MySpace, which at the time was insane. Like nobody was getting those kinds of plays on MySpace. And I asked him because when we started to become friends, like he was totally unsigned. I mean, still unsigned. And totally DIY. And as they're like planning this tour, I'm like, I was seeing all these covers of his songs showing up on YouTube and all these streams happening. And I'm like, dude, are you like bribing people to play covers of your songs on YouTube? Like what's going on here? Are you like buying these streams or these bots? Like, he's like, honestly, I just respond to every message that comes in, and my MySpace profile is written in first person. Now, this is, and it sounds so obvious now, but mind you, this was like 2008, 2009. This is the era of the bands, and I'm sure you can relate to this. This is the era of the bands who were putting up the very formulaic "thanks for the ad" banner on somebody's comment sheet that looks like a label did it, and then everyone's MySpace profile was like pristinely created, looking like a label made it, because everyone was fronting, everyone was trying to make themselves look bigger than they were. And then the artist that went the other way, that did something completely different from what everyone else was doing, like Ron, and just was like, "Hey, I'm Ron. This is my profile. Hope you like my music." And no one was doing that. I wasn't doing that. I was making my MySpace profile looking like a label made it. And he responded to everybody. Word spread. It's like, oh, this guy with great music is responding to us, and no one else was. I wouldn't respond to messages at the time. I was an idiot, but it was because I was like, oh, I have to pretend I'm too famous to respond to messages, and it was such a backwards mindset. But we didn't know. Nobody knew at that time, because all we had known was to make it in the industry was getting signed to a label, and we were seeing all of our favorite stars, our idols, our favorite musicians on MySpace. Their profiles were run by the labels, and so we're like, oh, well, this is how you do it and whatever. But like the artists that went a different way, and I think what's exciting and inspiring from your story is like Paradise Fears went a different way. It's just like you swallowed your pride in terms of what you had been kind of probably conditioned to growing up, as in like, well, musicians don't do this because musicians have to have this mystique. And you're like, you know what? Fuck that. That's old school thinking. And and let's meet the people. Let's meet them. And you learned really quickly that not only did they not think you were less cool for meeting them, they bought your CDs, and they a lot of them became super fans because they actually got to meet you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's crazy how many messages I still get from people like, "Oh, I met you online for a show back in 2011 at an all-time low show." And sometimes I'll see pictures floating around of like us like wearing our headphones around our neck and that whole thing. But when you said Ron Pope, is that like drop in the ocean?
Drop in the ocean. Oh yeah, you know it. Yeah.
Dude, it's so
what a
good.
song. Yeah.
Our tour manager was a huge Ron Pope fan. He introduced me to that song. It's so good. I covered that song at some point. I'm pretty sure that was one of the first songs that first song I played to like my wife when we started dating.
I'll tell him. No, it's funny because at the time he was blowing up. This is the MySpace era. I was booking my first tour out to New York, and I was trying to book a show in New York, and I just like MySpaced singer-songwriters, New York City, and I started, and MySpace, man, I just like, there still isn't a platform like MySpace. I'm so like nostalgic for what MySpace offered, but you could literally search for artists, check the unsigned box, independent artists, and just see all the shows that they were playing in that city. It was so cool. And anyway, I searched it and I saw, oh, this singer-songwriter named Ron Pope is playing this cafe in Greenwich Village over the time I'm going to be in New York. Let me ask him if I can open for him and do like a show trade. So I hit him up, or I listened to his music. I'm like, yeah, this is great. Hit him up. And he's like, yeah. So my offer was, can I open your show in Greenwich Village? And then I'm actually booking Summerfest in Milwaukee right now. I happen to be being able to book a stage at Summerfest, which is the world's largest music festival. Over 1 million people go every year. and I was booking a stage, and it was an 11-day festival. And I'm like, yo, I can book you every day on the stage if you want. It's a side stage, but you'll sell a boatload of merch and you'll make a ton of fans. It's great. I've been doing it for a couple of years already. And he's like, oh, that sounds like a great deal. So I opened for him in front of 40 people at this cafe, and then he played this festival. We became good friends. And then he was like, so I see you tour all the time, Ari. Like, I really want to tour. I've sold millions of downloads on iTunes right now, and I have all these fans, but like, I don't have a booking agent, I don't have a manager, I don't have a label, I don't know how to tour. He's like, would you book a tour for me? I'm like, no, but I'll book a tour for us if I'm opening. And he's like, all right, let's go. So I booked us a 60-date tour around the country, and we did it together, and it was great. But here was the problem, though. Our tour was 2011. Now, MySpace had since pretty much died like a year or two prior to that. And he hadn't transitioned. He hadn't, at the time, gotten any of those fans' contact information. And it was like he had all these fans on MySpace. And this is a cautionary tale that I continue to tell because it's important, because platforms die. And like the artists who are building everything up on TikTok right now, and they're 19, and they're like, yeah, TikTok's a thing. I'm like, yeah, it's a thing right now, but let me tell you a little story in my day about MySpace. And it's like, yo, so he had all these fans on MySpace. MySpace died, and then we went on this tour, and he had no way to contact them. He hadn't built up his YouTube following. He hadn't transitioned them to Facebook. He hadn't gotten their emails. So he had all of these sales, and Apple does not give contact information when somebody downloads your song. Unfortunately, I wish I got everyone's email who downloaded my music. But they don't. So, he's like, oh yeah, I sold 30,000 downloads in the city of Dallas. And that was the stats that I was using when booking the shows. And, 30,000 people in Dallas downloaded his music. And, we had like 350 people show up at the show, which is notable and fine, but like, that's not 30,000 people, and there was no way to even let these 30,000 people know other than like putting an ad in the paper at the time. Like, this was pre-targeted Facebook ads. This was pre all of that stuff. But it made me think, I'm like, wow, the email is very, very important. It's like, it's really important to own your fans, because right now you rent them the social media platform. He was renting his fans to MySpace, through MySpace. People rented their fans to Vine. I had a lot of friends who were Viners at the time, and then when Vine died, they lost all their fans. People are renting their fans to Instagram, to YouTube, to TikTok right now. And I thought it was really smart. You had the foresight at the time. It's just like, all right, we're not just trying to make this quick buck here and trying to make this money. Granted, you made a lot of money in that time period, which is awesome. Way more money than most artists were making who were the openers of the normal openers of these tours, but you were also getting their emails. So that's really smart. How many emails would you say you got through that time period?
Somewhere in the thousands. I'd have to be honest. We got it in like a notebook, and we like wrote down all of them. And I think that I think we made the mistake of probably about 2/3 of the way through. I think that we actually stopped collecting emails because it was slowing us down a bit.
Yep. And
in retrospect, I wish that we had just kept doing it the entire time. But I think that we did stop collecting them about 2/3 of the way through. But 100%, dude, I agree that that's such a great story and a great reminder about the importance of collecting a contact list and not relying on just like one platform where all people are hosted, like Facebook likes, and then organically you can't really reach those people anymore. There's a segment in our webinar that I do that we call it like the rain catcher, which is the idea that like, when the storm happens and you have all this exposure and these new listeners are happening, like you want to make sure you have like a quote unquote rain catcher, like a funnel or something to collect the contact info. And then we make this joke about how it's kind of like you have this farmer neighbor who's call him Farmer Facebook, and he's like, howdy y'all, like you want to use one of my rain catchers? They're free. It's called Facebook and Instagram. Right. And it's like yeah, cool. And he's like, well, you know what? You want to reach these people, you got to pay me some money. Right. And then so we're like, yeah, so, take the rain catchers and like pour them into your own rain catcher, like be on the platforms, but like you absolutely need to have your own CRM as well, that you're building that relationship with them.
CRM.
Yeah, the customer relationship manager. So like
What is
like
that?
a email list, like ActiveCampaign, Mailchimp,
Mailchimp. I got
like
it. Yeah,
any of
yeah.
those platforms.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, totally. And that's I think we're finding is really important. And I've learned over the years. I mean, email and now SMS marketing. I mean, just a way that you can own your fans' information and like things shift and evolve. And like, yeah, it's great to like, sure, currently Instagram is like the official artist homepage at this point, is their profile, is like how you interact and how you get information out. But 4 years ago it was Facebook, and maybe it'll shift and evolve into TikTok. Who knows? Um, Things always change, but it's like if you build everything up on one platform, how are you going to get to those people when that platform becomes irrelevant or these people leave? Like we saw, well, like we've seen time and time again. And I found the only surefire way is email or SMS marketing or through text messaging. And it's like, my email list is my lifeline. Like that is how I'm able to survive. And that's like, you know, and it takes a bit of humility also when like I get like people like to throw their vanity metric stats at me, their definitions of success. I'm like, oh, you don't have 100,000 followers on Instagram. You must not be very big or whatever. I'm like, dude, you know what? I'm making a living doing what I love. I think that's success. Like, I can point to a plenty of people with hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers who have day jobs and are just trying to pay their bills, and they're not making. It's like these vanity metrics that get thrown around because people think they know how to define success based on numbers on a screen are completely out there. It's like I have a friend, and it's like, man, it's disappointing to see this, but what she does is like she's got a decent number of Instagram followers, and she'll post an Instagram post, and literally every post she makes, she buys like 1,000 or 2,000 likes for every post. And I'm just like, dude, it takes 3 seconds. I'm like tapping through your likes, and they're all bots. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And
Mhm.
what is your ultimate goal? Like, is your
Mhm.
goal to get more likes on Instagram? Then if that's your ultimate goal, then you have success. You have succeeded in getting likes on Instagram. Way to go. And if your ultimate goal is to get more quote unquote followers on Instagram, and by any means, even by purchasing bots, then all right, you've achieved your goal in 37 seconds by tapping this one button and spending $20 on all the bots that have come through. But I imagine your ultimate goal is not likes on an Instagram post or followers or whatever. I imagine your ultimate goal is making a living with your music, having a successful music career, having a fan base. Now, bots don't come to shows. Bots don't show up. Don't buy tickets. Bots don't download your music or support your crowdfunding campaigns. Bots aren't standing in line before an all-time low show. Bots weren't buying CDs. The bots are vapid. There's nothing to them. So like that's the thing that I think we get so caught up in the numbers, we forget the ultimate goal, and we forget why are we doing what we're doing.
Mm. Yeah, that's so good, man. I think you're 100% right. And yeah, it's like it's the trap that can happen when we get too attached to symbols of success rather than the meaning of what those symbols point to. I think the same thing can happen with money. Like money for the sake of money is very shallow and
Mm-hmm.
meaningless.
Yes.
Money for the sake of what it represents and making an impact and helping people, what you can do with money, that's incredibly meaningful. Same thing with follower numbers. Like, follower numbers for the sake of follower numbers, completely shallow, completely meaningless.
Right.
Follow numbers for a greater impact, be able to reach more people. There's something really noble there, but also, yeah, it's definitely not like size is one thing, but also the depth of the relationship and the kind of impact that you can make with those
Mm-hmm.
people. In a lot of ways, I think trumps and it's a much easier goal to achieve, especially if your goal is really just to make a living with your music.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a lot easier to just focus on the people that you have and go really deep with those relationships, and
Yes.
rather than trying to get millions of fans.
Totally. It's the super fan concept. And like you just mentioned, impact. It's you can't really measure impact by looking at Spotify numbers. I don't know when I see a stream there if that stream came from a person who just had a spiritual experience listening to my song and is now bawling and their life has been completely changed, or if that stream came from somebody who skipped the song after 37 seconds on a playlist and that they just went, I have no idea. There's no impact there. You're not feeling the impact from streaming, but you do feel that impact when you meet them after the show, or you see them at the concert, or, this is why I'm excited about NFTs, the possibility of NFTs, because that is a way that some fans eventually, now it's just in the crypto community, but eventually fans could say, you know what? I really love your music so much. You've impacted me so much. I'm going to pay you way more than a third of a penny when I listen to your song. I want to buy this NFT from this song or this music video or this visualizer, whatever it is, that has been so meaningful to me. You as an artist are so meaningful to me. I want this part of my collection, and I'm gonna spend $10,000 on it, and that is what we are going to see. And this is similar to kind of like, it's just taking crowdfunding or Patreon patronage to another level. It's like that's in an extent what kind of Patreon has done and Kickstarter has done, is enabled artists to take their super fans and measure that impact a little bit more by enabling them to pay you money, which is like something that is such a basic concept, but I think we have lost track of that, is because like traditionally fans paid artists money by buying concert tickets and merch. They bought their CDs too, but that money traditionally went to the record labels, and they knew that they weren't paying their artists for that. But they're like, you know what? I'm going to buy the tickets and I'm going to support them. But more so, they were doing it because they really love that artist. And then, that's like when we saw VIP experiences and meet and greet experiences and all of that. I once had somebody hit me up before my show in Chicago at Shuba's. It was sold out, but the capacity is only like 200. And I didn't offer any VIP, any exclusive experiences or anything. I'm like, I don't know anything. I mean, like, there's 200 people here. Like, what's a VIP? Like a VIP, I thought it was dumb. I thought that was like, reserved for Justin Bieber. But this dude just messaged me out of the blue and was like, hey, I'm bringing a date to your show. She's a huge fan. Do you think you could invite us down to the green room before the show and play us a couple songs? Just 10 minutes, hang out, and I'll pay you $200. I'm just like, fuck yeah, that is the easiest $200 I ever made. They show up and then I invite him to, literally 10 minutes later I made $200. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, oh my gosh. Like, okay, that is a way that you can measure, like, some people are willing to pay their favorite artists a little bit more than a third of a penny of a cent on a stream. You just have to enable them and offer them ways to do that. And I think we're finally shifting that mentality around from just you have to pay for recorded music, which nobody is valuing recorded music anymore because of streaming, and that's okay. But fans are really willing to pay their favorite artists, and that's what we are also seeing on live streaming. Like I was just chatting with Claire Means, who she's an instructor for Ari's Tech Academy for the live streaming course, and she makes her living on Twitch and Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and she has these super fans. We're talking like maybe 100, 200 super fans, but she's making a really, really good living live streaming, engaging these super fans who are paying her on a regular basis. Like I had the head of music at Twitch on this program on the New Music Business, and he said that the artists who are making over $50,000 on Twitch are doing so from just 183 people. And it was like, oh wow, like $50,000, that is like the median income in the United States for people, and that's a living wage, and they're doing so from just 183 people. And when you point that out and you're like, wow, I don't need millions and millions of fans, and like you experience that direct to fan in the most traditional sense of the direct to fan marketing word that you could possibly be, which is direct to fan on the street marketing to them. So I think it's an exciting history and trajectory that we've had, but I'm curious your thoughts on where everything is now. So Paradise Fears have been, you've done great tours over the years, done really cool support slots. I know you were signed to a label for a minute. I don't know if you still are. your Spotify numbers, we're going to numbers, are still strong. People are still listening to the band, but I know you've been relatively quiet for the last few years. I'm curious, just like, what are you doing now, and what have you learned over the course of the last decade working with this grassroots DIY band and everything that has gone into that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we think is kind of funny. Like, we've talked about it with as a band, that like the numbers like are like doing better than they were when we were super super active. So it's kind of cool to see things take a life of their own. But about 3 years ago now, when I found out I was gonna be a dad, and we were gone most of the year, I was basically looking for what comes next, and how I was going to provide for my family without being gone, and kind of stumbled upon a few mentors in the online business world, and they taught me how to coach and help other artists based on some of the lessons that we had learned. And at the beginning, when I was reflecting, like, okay, what should we share? Like, the number one thing that, there's a few like strategies that we did that worked well, but I know that you're aware of this too, is this tendency to, like, it's like we're surfers, and it's like we're all trying to catch these waves, and sometimes there's waves that things that worked 10 years ago, and like these waves had already passed, and everyone's like trying to catch up, like, oh, this worked for this person. But it's like, really, we need to kind of be looking at, okay, what's the upcoming wave right now that we can kind of, what's the trend that's happening, how we can get ahead of that so we can get this boost of momentum. So I mean, in some ways it's interesting. A lot of what I've learned over time is that there's these fundamental things that don't really change. Like, the ocean is always the ocean, or a wave is always a wave, even though they're different waves, they're made up of the same thing. There's these same fundamental principles, which is about having a valuable product, and about growing your audience and connecting with the people who are most likely to resonate with it, and then monetizing it. These are kind of these like fundamentals. But the ways that you do that, the technology, the different strategies have evolved so quickly, and they're continuing to evolve so quickly. It's so hard to keep up with, but it's also really fun. It's like we're surfers catching these waves. The biggest thing that I think I've learned, so at the beginning, the first thing I was like, okay, well, tour hacking was the best thing I ever did. So I just created like a tour hacking workshop and started teaching, like, okay, here's how you go and do this. And it's like, does this still work? People weren't really listening to CDs anymore. I was like, would people still buy CDs? There's one band with two guys in the band called In Loving Memory who went out and they did it, and they made $11,000 in a single month doing it with two guys in the band.
When was this?
This is probably about 2.5, 3 years ago now.
Okay, and they were selling CDs?
It was right when I started selling CDs. Yeah,
so I think this was like 2018, something like that? 2017?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think the thing too is like people aren't really, I don't think people were buying the CDs to like listen to the CDs. I think it was more just like they were just getting it because they had connected with them and they wanted to support them.
Right.
Or it was like a memento or something. Usually I wouldn't necessarily recommend like focusing like hugely on like a CD strategy, but anyway, so I was like, okay, awesome, like tour hacking, like go do this thing, it's great. And realized pretty quickly that most people, most artists, like they loved the story of tour hacking. Like, oh, I can see how that works. That's great.
Right.
I don't want to go meet people waiting in line for shows, and I have a family and a day job, and like, is there any other way?
We're in a digital world right now, so it's like there's got to be a way that you can take the concepts from tour hacking into the digital space.
Exactly. And so, I mean, the last 2.5 years has really been a process of sort of exploring and figuring out like how can we do this using the tools online. And a lot of what we're teaching now is sort of like a mixture of the lessons that we learned with Paradise Spheres, but also mixed with the lessons I've learned with Modern Musician. And, the business grew from being about $36,000 in debt when we first started to bring in over $1 million in 2020, mostly on the back of paid traffic and JV partner relationships.
What business are you talking about?
Modern Musician. So the coaching business that I started when I started my family.
Gotcha.
I was kind of like the way I described it, it's like a basketball player who became a coach and kind of started working with other artists. And,
gotcha.
And it's awesome. It's like the same way that like when I became a dad, there's the moment that I found out I was going to be a dad, and the moment that Xander was born for the first time. I remember just like my whole center of gravity shifted, and it was just this hard to articulate like feeling of seeing yourself in another person, and just this like admiration for the cycle of life. So I was like, lying like the cycle of life.
Have you heard Ben Folds' song "Still Fighting It"?
Yeah, I love that song.
It's similar. That's kind of the concept of that of seeing yourself in your kid, and like he's like,
Mhm.
there's this line. It's so weird to be back here as a kind of as he's watching his son grow and watching, like,
Ah,
being in like more or less remembering that stage of life, or at least experiencing it now through different eyes. That's yeah. I loved how he kind of captured that concept in that song.
oh man, I love that. I need to go re-listen to it. Have a
Yeah,
new perspective on it.
yeah.
So the same way that I look at my kids and I see a piece of myself in them. I feel the same way about the artists that we're working with, because like I remember what it was like when we were first starting out and we lived in our van and we slept in Walmart parking lots,
Right.
and I remember people called us Paradise Queers instead of Paradise Fears, and there was
Mm,
this stage of like needing, trying so hard and having to work through the self doubt. So there's like just a huge amount of fulfillment and like passion that comes from helping other people. Um, but I think that the through line that I've become more and more aware of, because it was both the thing that really helped the first 9 months of Modern Musician starting out when I was coaching. It was tough, man, and it was tough because when I started out, I created like a course that was mostly based around tour hacking and
mhm.
made like zero sales of it when I first released it. And I was about to be a dad, and I was like, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna have to like go get a quote unquote real job, like a nine to
Right.
five job? And the thing that really helped start getting traction with Modern Musician was also the same thing that helped starting getting traction with Paradise Fears. And that's also the thing that helps the artists we're working with right now get the most traction starting out, which was really about those one-to-one conversations and having a direct conversation one-on-one with the people that you're looking to serve. And so for Modern Musician, what that looked like was getting on coaching calls and actually
Mm,
starting to work with a few people one on one. And that was when I got my first, quote unquote success story with like they went tour hacking and they made $11,000 in a month. And that's when things started like the rubber started to meet the road.
sure.
And what I realized is just like I was just out of touch. I was what I call it, like I call it being out of tune, with the needs of the market. I think I was disconnected because I had reached a certain point, but I forgot what it was like to be at the beginning. Like
Mm,
and so listening to them and asking questions was just like it was about like getting in tune. The same way, even if you had the greatest song in the world and you practiced it, you played it perfectly, but you got on stage and the guitar was completely out of tune,
huh.
it wouldn't resonate, right? It would
Can
just sound
imagine.
terrible. So it was really about like having conversations, listening, and really connecting and learning how to communicate. And so that's what really helped us grow and get to our first six figures as a business. And then from there, we had to start building a team, just because it's really hard to scale like one-to-one coaching.
Right.
Um, but ultimately, the through line is what we call virtual tour hacking. And basically, what it looks like is just a campaign that's based on a messenger campaign. And the thing that we see getting the best
Facebook Messenger.
traction, Facebook and Instagram Messenger,
Okay.
is just a campaign where it's literally like tour hacking, but instead of walking up to people online, you do it virtually, and it's like a 20-second long video where you're just introduced, like, hey, what's going on? My name's
So you're
Michael.
you're
I
you're
play.
like, are you break it down for me? So like your DM fans of a band that's similar to you. So like if we were doing the all time low, instead of going up to the kids in line at their show, you're going to the followers of all time low on their Instagram, and you're sending them cold messages saying, "Hey, big fan of all time low. I saw you dig them too. Here's my new song. Let me know what you think." Or how break it down for me a little bit further.
Yep. So you definitely could do it organically like that if you're just getting
Okay.
started. You don't want to put any money into paid traffic. I think that's a great way to start. Just like follow all your favorite bands, start interacting, start connecting, and then
Hmm.
maybe follow them. If they follow you back, just reach out and connect and say, "Hey, what's going on? I just wanted to introduce myself," and have a conversation like that. I think that's a
Hmm.
great way to start. But what we do for most artists that we're working with personally is we'll launch a messenger campaign using an ad campaign on like Facebook Business Manager that
Got it.
also targets Instagram. And the video is like a 20-second video that just says, hey, what's going on? My name is Michael. I play keyboard in a band called Paradise Fears. I think if you're a fan of blank, blank, or blank, you might like our music too. If you're interested, click on send message button below. I'll send you a song, and I'm looking forward to connecting more.
Hmm.
And then people click on send message, and it goes to the inbox, and then you start having a conversation. And we have like a kind of a guideline for how to have these conversations and build a relationship. But really, it's just about being a human being and just like having a conversation with with a new person, and at the end of it, making sure that you make them an invitation to join your private community, and that's how you can get their email address and their contact info. And the biggest issue that we've had through doing that is, and this happens with literally every single person that we launch one of these campaigns for, is, and I call this like a quote unquote good quality problem to have, because it sounds a little bit ridiculous, but it's like it is a serious problem. Is that every single person is like, you reach this point usually within a first week where you're getting so many messages coming in that you just can't keep up with the message flow, and you're trying to have conversations with everyone, and you can't keep. So it's like you're drowning in new fans of your music.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why it's a quote unquote good quality problem to have, but it's
Sure.
a serious problem because you can't scale it up. So a big part of what we do now is we build out AI chatbot messenger campaigns
Sure.
using Janus AI, Dialogflow, that basically use the same tools that Google Home and Amazon Alexa use to sort of interpret the meaning.
Is that like I haven't heard of those platforms, but is that like ManyChat? I've heard of ManyChat. Is that the same thing?
It's like a super smart ManyChat. So it also uses ManyChat, but what it does is it basically uses ManyChat. So the way that it kind of you can have those huge, almost choose your own adventure maps where you can go different places within the conversation. But the AI component of it is the same thing that like Siri and Amazon Alexa use to kind of interpret the meaning of what you say. So for example, if you share a song and you say, "I'd love to hear what you think," and they say, "Oh, it was dope," or "Oh man, that was awesome,"
Right.
"That was sick," then it's able to be like, "Okay, that was a good thing. So based on that, we should go down this path instead." Yeah. And
So do people actually think they're interacting with a person?
sometimes, but we don't encourage artists to do that just because it's a bit misleading. Like, so usually we recommend like starting out by being like, "Hey, so this is my blank bot," or you can even give them a name.
Fun.
And the point of it is so that I can figure out if so I can share some of the music, and if you like the songs, then I'll invite you to our private community where we can connect more personally.
And
then
what's
we
the
recommend,
private community?
This is one thing that we're playing around with, because there's so many different platforms you could do this on. The one that we're using right now that's been working pretty well is Facebook groups, like a private Facebook group. But right now I'm exploring using Discord as like a community place where we can just invite people there. And
I know Patreon officially partnered with Discord, and Discord has been kind of more the go-to for a lot of Twitch streamers. They take their community to Discord. I mean, Discord I've been hearing more and more about is like, that's the hub for community, especially because like Facebook, you're at the mercy of Facebook and how they work, and so many people. I mean, I deleted Facebook from my phone, and it's kind of like I literally only go on Facebook for the groups that I'm a part of that I want to be engaged with, but I like wish they weren't on Facebook. So I think Discord would be a great option.
Cool. Yeah, it's really brand new. I'm actually doing like a beta test. I'm getting ready to release new music, and so like created a new project. We have big plans for how we're releasing it, and one of the things that we're doing is creating a community on Discord so we can kind of test it out and see how it goes.
So is this I'm curious about this coaching stuff that you're doing, and this program that you have, where this messenger campaign, and what's the end goal? Because if people are paying you a lot of money to learn this stuff, but then they're also spending a lot of money on Facebook ads, which are, I know firsthand, are very hit or miss. You can waste a lot of money trying things out, thousands of dollars trying things out before you find something that works. How can they justify this investment? What is the return here? How are they working towards ROI, or are they working towards ROI? What are the goals here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think the two biggest goals, at least on the surface, are like, one, they want to grow their audience and have like a meaningful connection with like real people who are enjoying the music. So that's a big one. And then two is they want it to be sustainable as a business. So they want it to be profitable. And personally, I remember starting Modern Musician, and I invested $36,000 into business mentors, and it took nine months for things to really start gaining traction. But also I can, in retrospect, see that I was planting the seeds, and there's no way that we would have built what we did now without mentorship. But so those are the two main goals, and I mean the main goal with the business model is we want to get people to $5K a month with their music, because I feel like that's a good
Okay.
point where they can do it full time.
Yeah.
I try to be as transparent as possible with people that so much of it depends on their starting point, where they're at. Like, if you're coming into the program, like one of our artists, Jason Tonioli, is a piano instrumentalist, and he came into the program and he was already killing it. He had like a $11,000 a month music business already.
Doing what primarily?
Had funnels selling piano hymn books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so he's awesome. Yeah, he's fantastic. He's a really smart business person too. Like
Sure.
he's exceptional. He's awesome.
Sure.
But he came in $11,000 a month, and then in like 3 months he had brought in $209,000 from his funnels. So like,
And no, but step me through. But again, how? What does he by selling hymn books?
yeah, so that was his main offer, is selling hymn books. And then he has packages. He's a big ClickFunnels guy, so he's read a lot of Russell Brunson's books, and he's great. Like, he showed me his ClickFunnels.
ClickFunnels is the sales page platform where you can send somebody to this landing page. They decide the action they want to take, and then it sends you through a quote unquote funnel of different actions of like, put your email here, buy this offer, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So like creating different offer stacks, and again, like, so the reason I bring him up is because he's the exception. Like he's someone who came in, he was already doing $11,000 a month.
Sure.
And it's one thing to kind of like pour gasoline on the fire, but for someone who's brand new, who's coming in, it's unrealistic that they're going to go from a point where it's like they've invested a lot, but they're not making any money, to a point where they're making $5,000 a month in 3 months. So the initial goal is just to get to a point where they have a profitable funnel, where like they're putting in $1 and they're getting more than $1 out. And
what are
that's
the
something
offers
that
for
we'll be
the
able to do a
people
lot.
that don't have hymn books? What are some of the offers?
So there's four different offers that we recommend that they make, and I'm happy to share the four of them. And there's a lot of information that we could go into here that would take a few hours. But
right. No, just give me the broad strokes here. I'm curious because it's just like, because here's where I'm coming from. I'm like, all right, you can't sell CDs anymore, I would imagine. I mean, you could, but like you said, people are buying them as like souvenirs, like your tour hacking did. Are you sending people, eventually, like we've experimented with sending people to Spotify, which if you can do this on a macro scale, you can trigger the algorithms and you can be profitable. We have tested this. It's a full-on math equation. It's basically, if you're going to spend this amount of money on ads, you're going to send people to Spotify, and a million streams is going to get you around $3,000, $3,500. So it's like you can kind of crunch the numbers there. It's a broken funnel if you're in the marketing terms, and because like Spotify only gives you very, very limited data. So it's like, all right, well, that probably that can be also challenging when you're trying to measure $1 in, $1 out, $1 in, $2 out, whatever. So what is it merch? I mean, I've seen people do merch funnels where it's like buy a t-shirt, but then like you buy a t-shirt from an artist you don't know. Like, so yeah, step me through this. What are these offers?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And honestly, I mean, I'm really intrigued by, like, before the interview, I was like looking at Lucidius and looking at your Instagram. I was like, man, that's really cool. That's really impressive. And I think that like imagining these strategies aligning together could just be like super powerful.
Yep.
But so the 4 different offers that we recommend, and the ones that we build out, there's a couple of them are merchandise based, and then one of them's a inner circle, so it's like a Patreon model. And then my personal favorite one is a high ticket offer. And that's the one that I think has the most lucrative like potential, and it's also the one that requires, like, you don't need to have a lot of people in order to make a serious revenue doing that. So we have examples of people like Todd Herzog, who has like 250 people in his private community, and he's sold over $4,000 of these high ticket offers already.
That goes along the same mindset of what's happening that we're seeing on live streaming on Twitch, and how you don't need millions of fans to make thousands of dollars. You can have hundreds of fans to make tens of thousands of dollars.
100%. Yeah, I forget where I heard this, but the idea that it's a lot easier to make one $5,000 sale than it is to make 5,000 $1 sales. which is really interesting. Like because one $5,000 sale versus $5,001 sales. Um, I think that there's something really powerful about going deep and narrow and really focusing on the high end to enter a market. Because also I think when you think about the high end, it really kind of forces your brain to think about how can I deliver more value.
Hmm.
And that's always a really good question to be asking. Is like, and there's a lot of really fun, almost like priceless experiences and things that you can create. That really gets into like the experience kind of level, which is in
Right.
terms of value is so subjective and something it can be totally life changing. And for someone who has millions of dollars, spending $5,000 on something might or might not be that much money to them, but the experience can be so valuable.
So, what are some examples of high ticket items or offerings that these musicians can and are seeing success with?
Yeah, I think this is definitely the thing that I geek out about the most because also it's more of a newer thing that we're realizing, I guess,
Sure.
because with Paradise Fears, I mean, definitely a huge part of our business model was we offered private parties. So,
Huh.
we would go out to our fans' houses and perform for them and their friends and their family. And, we did this for a variety of different events. And
Hmm.
I think the most expensive one we ever did was like a $6,000 event.
Yeah.
And those were awesome. And also the people that we connected with through that were just like the best relationships that we built. Those were like the quote unquote super fans, the people who
Right.
we know by first name and just amazing. And I think for a long time I assumed that because for us it was true that the people that we did those for were people that came out to a show previously, like they were already a really big fan,
Right.
and then they would get these high ticket offers, and so I would assume like someone wouldn't invest that kind of money unless they're already like a really big fan.
Sure.
And what we're finding now is like with Todd Herzog, for example, like a $3,000 sale to someone who just came in through his ads,
Wow.
and what he's offering, and this is what we're starting to explore more now, is offering some form of there's a bunch of different things you could offer, but the thing that I'm probably most excited about is some form of like coaching in the form of either like songwriting coaching or in Todd's case it was like a songwriting / healing experience for someone who I think they had gone through a loss, and basically he met with her to help co-write the song. It was a $3,000 offer, and it was like hugely valuable for her, and he was deeply fulfilled from it as well. I know he's also done like private songs where
Is
he's
Todd
like
Herzog, is he the guy from Survivor from 10 years ago? Is this a different Todd
no,
Herzog?
different Todd Herzog.
Okay. Got it.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I think I googled him like 2 or 3 days ago as well, and I saw the same thing, and I was like, oh, that's funny. But no, if you type in Todd Herzog music, you'll probably find
Is
him.
he
But
the okay, Jewish rocker?
yeah, he's such a good guy. Yeah, he's
Awesome.
awesome.
Cool.
But yeah, we've had examples, and also there's like this. I think he's like 17-year-old kid named Bryce who he got a $1,500 high ticket sale. I think it was like a wedding that he performed at. So yes, obviously there's like weddings and there's
Cool.
like songwriting, like co-writing kind of
That's
experiences.
cool. I mean, I love that it's kind of, I mean, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like when I ran my Kickstarter, mind you, my first one, gosh, this was probably 10 years ago at this point. I had an item on there that I would write you a song, customized based on, it would be for you or your partner, whomever you wanted me to write it for. I was charging $350, and I maxed. I put a capacity of or a limit on 5 of those. Now, day one that I announced my Kickstarter, those 5 sold out, and I was like, oh my gosh, like people actually. That's the thing is like we forget that we have this skill or we have this gift that a lot of people don't have, and they like my songwriting enough. They're like, oh my gosh, you could write a customized song and you'll sing it and record a video for it, and I can give it to my girlfriend or whatever on Valentine's Day on our birthday, and they both came to my show, whatever. So like it makes a lot of sense. And similarly, I mean, I did a house concert tour 1 year where it was like one fall or something, and I did 30, 40 house concerts. It was just a tour of just house concerts, and they were probably capped at like 30, 40 people at most, but many of them were probably around the 30 mark, 20 to 30 mark. I made more money on that tour than I did on tours playing clubs with 500 people a night. And that's crazy when you really think about it. It's just like, again, as an industry, we're so obsessed with the numbers, with the macro, with quantity over quality. Like, this has been something in the history of the music business, and we're finally shifting away from this mentality, but like to an extent, and not so in another way, but like that it's been more impressive to sell, and we have valued success more impressively or deeper by making $1 million from 100,000 people than making $1 million from 1,000 people. And it's like, it's more, it's like people have always said, was like, yeah, the music business has always been the business of selling a lot of small priced items to a boatload of people. But now we're kind of shifting away from that, as in, you don't need to sell a bunch of small price items to a lot of people. You can, that's the 1,000 true fans concept. If you can find 1,000 fans out there that will pay you $100 a year for the rest of your life, you have a solid career. Now, it doesn't need to be 1,000. It could be 500 fans paying you $200 a year. It could be 250 fans paying you $300, $400, whatever. And any combination of that is, I think, what you're seeing in real time here. But that's absolutely, I think everything, this is a convergence of all of these things that I think we're discovering into this platform, this funnel that you've created right now, which I think is really smart. We don't have time to get into just what has been happening on the Facebook marketing and Apple iOS side, which is like a totally different conversation that we can have at a different time, because like marketers, ad specialists across the board are freaking out because Apple has put up this iron curtain right now, blocking Facebook and every other advertiser from accessing the data on iPhones these days, which, like, as a consumer, I'm just like, hell yeah, put up this privacy. I don't want Facebook listening to my conversations about how I need some new shoes, and then I see an ad for shoes on my Facebook or Instagram profile the next day. It's like, yeah, I don't want that. But then as an advertiser, I'm like, you know what? It helps me find very high quality, quote unquote, fans who are ready to convert. And so it's like that with shoes, everyone's like, oh yeah, forget Nike and Adidas, and I don't want them to advertise me. But it was like, how can I access fans of John Mayer, of JP Sachs, of Theo Katzman, of it's like, how can I find these fans of these artists that are similar to me, in the sense of just like, if they like these artists, they're probably going to like me. You knew, like, All Time Low. If you like All Time Low, you're probably going to like Paradise Fears. It's that concept now in an advertising realm, which I totally understand. And so I guess time is going to tell what will happen now that Apple has basically cut off all advertisers from accessing this data. There's workarounds, all of that stuff. We don't need to get into that. This has been a really incredible conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about all this stuff. I have one final question that I ask everybody at the end of the show, and it is, and I'm very curious to hear your answer. What does it mean to make it in the new music business?
I love that question. Yeah, I think the new music business, and in a lot of ways it's always been this way, is about impacting as many people as possible, or even just making as big of an impact as possible. Not necessarily the amount of people, but also like the kind of impact they're making. So I think that ultimately it's about the connection that you have with those people. And I think what it means is having a lot more transparency, a lot more interaction, a lot more conversation happening between you and your audience. And I think that there's going to be a lot of movement towards, I think that the role of a musician, the role of music in general, has for as long as the history can recall, has been a tribal experience about bringing people together, and a lot of times kind of has facilitated transformation. Like, we're coming of age, and it's like, now we're gonna have this ceremony and we're gonna have music, and it's sort of like it moves someone from point A to point B. Yep. So I think that there's gonna be a big movement in terms of musicians recognizing their role of like transformation givers and helping to like almost like as a part of like a healing process, maybe even, or even just like some, like I think empowering people, like being more of a guide, more spiritual guide, and helping to facilitate these transformations.
All right. Michael Walker, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great.
Thanks for having me, man. This is a lot of fun.